One sniff of a woman's hair changed everything. No line in the script, no direction from a writer, just an actor making a weird and totally impulsive choice on set that accidentally created one of the greatest slow-burn romances in television history. We'll circle back to that one soon. A shocking number of your favorite sitcom couples nearly didn't exist, and today we're counting down 10 of them from the 70s through the early 2000s. We're talking last-minute casting swaps, network sabotage, actors who flat-out refused parts, and romantic storylines that were never supposed to survive past a single episode. The couples you grew up thinking were destiny turned out to be lucky accidents, and some of these stories are genuinely wild. If you're into TV history and behind-the-scenes chaos, hit that like button and subscribe because we do this kind of thing a lot around here. Let's get into it. Number 10. Mike and Carol Brady. The Brady Bunch. The Brady Bunch premiered on ABC in 1969, and Mike and Carol Brady became the template for the wholesome TV marriage. But the road to casting those two turned out to be a lot bumpier than you'd expect. Creator Sherwood Schwartz first wanted Broadway actor Bob Holliday, who'd played Superman on stage, for the role of Mike Brady. Network executives killed that idea because Holliday lacked on-camera experience. Gene Hackman even came up in the conversation, though at that point, nobody really knew who he was. Paramount contract player Robert Reed ended up landing the part. The Carol Brady story, though, that one's stranger. Comedic actress Joyce Bulifant didn't just audition for the role, she essentially had it locked down. Screen tests with the child actors were done, costumes were tried on, and a 7-year contract was signed. Some of the girls were reportedly cast, partly because they resembled Bulifant. And then, Ann B. Davis got locked in as the wacky housekeeper Alice, which meant producers suddenly needed a more grounded mom to balance the comedy. Just like that, Bulifant was out and Florence Henderson stepped in. Bulifant later reflected that she'd been signed, sealed, and delivered, but took it in stride and called Henderson a lovely lady. Behind the scenes, Robert Reed actually couldn't stand the show and clashed with Schwartz so often that he got written out of what became the final episode over a script dispute. None of that stopped the Brady family unit from enduring for decades in reruns, just not with the people originally supposed to anchor it. Number 9. Doug and Carrie Heffernan, the King of Queens. 9 seasons and over 200 episodes on CBS. And the King of Queens worked almost entirely because of the chemistry between Kevin James and Leah Remini. That pairing almost never happened because Remini didn't even want to take the meeting in the first place. Failed pilots had beaten her down so badly that she passed on the audition entirely. That changed when CBS chief Les Moonves reportedly called her agent to ask who Remini thought she was for turning it down. Before Remini came aboard, Kevin James ran a table read with Tony Danza filling in as Carrie. James later told that story on the Today Show, explaining they literally could not find their female lead. And here's another wrinkle worth knowing about. Carrie's father, Arthur Spooner, was first played by veteran comedian Jack Carter in a shop pilot, even though the part had been written for Jerry Stiller. Stiller initially turned it down. Carter filmed the role, and when Stiller eventually changed his mind, those scenes had to be completely reshot. Remini later wrote in her memoir that James was her first leading man, and despite working with others since, she never found anyone who compared favorably to him. Number 8. Cliff and Clair Huxtable, The Cosby Show. 62 million people were tuning in every Thursday during the early years of The Cosby Show. NBC went from last place to first largely on the back of this single program, which held the #1 spot in the Nielsen ratings for 5 consecutive seasons. But Cliff and Clair Huxtable, as we know them, almost look completely different. Bill Cosby's original pitch positioned Cliff as a limousine driver and Clair as a union plumber. He also briefly floated the idea of making Clair a Dominican housewife who would burst into Spanish whenever she got frustrated, a sort of reverse I Love Lucy concept. Camille Cosby and executive producer Marcy Carsey pushed back hard, arguing for a professional couple that mirrored the Cosby's own family. And that's how Clair became a lawyer and Cliff became a doctor. Felicia Rashad won the role because of the quiet way she played a scene arguing with Theo during her screen test, bringing a subtlety that none of the other candidates matched. 2 Emmy nominations followed, and the couple became one of the most beloved marriages in sitcom history, all because someone had the good sense to reject the limo driver and plumber version. Number 7. Al and Peggy Bundy, married with children. Before The Simpsons, before Family Guy, Fox's very first primetime sitcom was Married with Children, and the woman originally offered the role of Peggy Bundy was Roseanne Barr. Roseanne turned it down. Fox's comedy development head Andrew Suskind had reportedly played recordings of Sam, Kinison, and Roseanne ranting about marriage, then told the producers to imagine those two married to each other. That was the creative brief for the whole character. When Roseanne passed, Katie Sagal walked in and reinvented the part from scratch. She showed up to her audition wearing a red bouffant wig and 6-inch heels, basically satirizing every 1960s TV housewife who'd ever graced the screen. Sagal had just come off a canceled show and had nothing left to lose, which meant she could swing for the fences. The kids almost looked different too, because the original Bundy children from the pilot were recast after their chemistry fell flat. Christina Applegate came in as Kelly, and that locked the cast into place. Married with Children became the show that helped put the fledgling Fox network on the map, premiering before The Simpsons even existed. Try to imagine this show with Roseanne Barr and two completely different kids, because it would have been a fundamentally different program. Number 6. George and Louise Jefferson, The Jeffersons. 11 seasons. The Jeffersons actually ran 2 seasons longer than its parent show, All in the Family. And Isabel Sanford, who played Louise, almost walked away from the whole thing before it started. Sanford had originally auditioned on All in the Family for a much smaller role as Louise's sister, figuring it was a 1-episode gig. When the spinoff came along, she balked at leaving her steady paycheck for a risky mid-season launch, since most spinoffs in that era crashed and burned. Casting director Jane Murray essentially backed her into a corner, telling Sanford the show would go forward with or without her. If she stayed behind, they'd simply recast Louise and she'd lose the role on both shows. That blunt ultimatum did the trick. Meanwhile, Sherman Hemsley proved nearly impossible to reach because he was touring in the Broadway musical Pearly, which meant George's brother Henry, played by Mel Stewart, had to fill in on All in the Family as a placeholder until Hemsley became available. Sanford made the leap, and in 1981, she became the first black woman to win the Emmy for Outstanding Lead Actress in a Comedy Series. 7 Emmy nominations and 5 Golden Globe nominations followed over the course of the run, making her one of the most decorated sitcom actresses of her era. That's the career she nearly turned her back on. Number 5. Tim and Jill Taylor, Home Improvement. Home Improvement premiered on ABC in 1991, and Tim and Jill Taylor grew into one of the defining sitcom marriages of the 90s. But Patricia Richardson wasn't the first choice for Jill. She was the emergency replacement. Frances Fisher originally landed the part and went through full rehearsals for the pilot. Test audiences, though, found her portrayal too dramatic, and the word that kept surfacing was whiny. Disney executive Dean Valentine reportedly put it bluntly, saying Fisher simply wasn't born with the gift of comedy. She was released from the production. That opened the door for Patricia Richardson, who at the time was 3 months postpartum with twins and stuck under contract for an unaired ABC project. Multiple failed sitcoms had made her gun-shy, and she specifically did not want to play another perfect TV mom in the Clair Huxtable mold. What convinced her was learning that the producers, Matt Williams, Carmen Finestra, and David McFadzean, had created Roseanne, which happened to be her favorite show. She later told E.T. that she did it for the money and to get out of the house. 4 Emmy nominations and 2 Golden Globe nominations came out of that reluctant yes. Richardson fought to make Jill imperfect, saying she wanted the character to make mistakes and sometimes be the wrong one in the relationship. That insistence gave the marriage a sense of reality that carried the show for 8 seasons. Number 4. Jim and Pam, The Office. Jim and Pam launched 1,000 "We're the Jim and Pam of our office" jokes, but the casting of both roles hung in the balance for a long time. Creator Greg Daniels seriously considered making Jim and Pam an interracial couple and took a strong interest in actress Erica Vitina Phillips for the role of Pam. Kathryn Hahn, Mary Lynn Rajskub, and Ann Dudek also read for the part, while Adam Scott turned up among the Jim candidates. Final casting stretched across 2 full days, with producers mixing and matching 4 Pams, 4 Jims, 4 Dwights, and 4 Michaels inside a real office setting. John Krasinski was originally asked to audition for Dwight, and he turned it down flat because he wanted Jim or nothing, despite having $0 in the bank by his own account. Jenna Fisher left such a strong impression that Daniels later compared it to a magic trick, saying she didn't appear to be acting, but simply appeared to be Pam, which knocked every other candidate out of the running. During auditions, Krasinski reportedly whispered to Fisher that she was his favorite Pam and he hoped she'd get the job. What most people don't realize is that the show nearly got canceled before the romance paid off. Fisher pitched bringing Jim's confession of feelings forward to the season 2 premiere, just in case the show got axed, so fans wouldn't be left hanging. The actual payoff, that kiss in the season 2 finale casino night, became one of the most talked about moments in sitcom history. Even getting that scene filmed the right way turned into a battle, because a huge divide opened up among the writing staff, the director, and the cast over how to shoot it. Steve Carell, who wrote the episode, and director Ken Kwapis pushed to follow the emotion, while some writers wanted a documentary crew gimmick. Emotion won out. Number 3. Niles and Daphne, Frasier. Remember that hair sniffing from the top of the video? Well, here's the full story. When Frasier launched on NBC in 1993, zero plans existed for a romance between Niles Crane and Daphne Moon. David Hyde Pierce and Jane Leaves occupied totally separate orbits within the show. Then, during an early episode, as Daphne walked past Niles, Hyde Pierce made a spontaneous choice, completely unscripted, to lean in and sniff her hair. Writers noticed it, and something clicked. David Isaacs, one of the show's writers, called it a happy accident, saying there had been no grand plan for what eventually became this epic, unrequited crush. Ken Levine, another writer, explained that with a brand new series, you want to stay ahead of the story, but also leave yourself open for things that are unexpected but just seem to work. Niles pining for Daphne became exactly that kind of thing, the unplanned element that defined the emotional core of an entire series. Jane Leaves later said she always felt Daphne held a candle for Niles too, though the writers believed that interpretation only held up in retrospect. The slow burn stretched across roughly 7 seasons of longing glances, near misses, and audiences begging these two to get together. They finally united in the season 7 finale, which aired in May of 2000. Frasier pulled in 108 Primetime Emmy nominations and 37 wins over the course of its run, passing The Mary Tyler Moore Show to set the record for most wins by a scripted series, a record it held until Game of Thrones overtook it years later. All of that from a single unscripted sniff. Number 2. Fran Fine and Maxwell Sheffield, The Nanny. The Nanny ran for 6 seasons on CBS, starting in 1993, and the slow simmering tension between flashy nanny Fran Fine and her uptight employer Maxwell Sheffield became the heart of the whole show. What makes this couple remarkable is that the entire series almost never existed because its star nearly walked away from acting altogether. Fran Drescher had spent almost a decade bouncing between commercials and TV pilots, always getting cast as what she called the third banana funny neighbor. She knew she could carry a lead role but never got the chance. After yet another failed sitcom called Princesses was canceled, she reached her breaking point. She recalled doing one last lousy pilot for the money and praying it wouldn't get picked up because she'd be trapped. She promised herself that if she couldn't get into the business in a meaningful way, where she had some say in her own destiny, she would get out entirely. And then one of those strange Hollywood coincidences intervened. On a flight to France, Drescher ended up seated next to CBS president Jeff Sagansky. She cornered him for the entire flight, and as she later put it, where was he gonna go? By the time they landed, Sagansky had agreed to take a pitch meeting. Drescher then visited her friend, supermodel Twiggy, in London, but Twiggy was too busy with work to spend time with her. So Drescher ended up babysitting Twiggy's 12-year-old daughter, schlepping her all over London for company. That dynamic, a loud, brash woman from Queens, looking after a proper British child, stuck in her head. She pitched it to her then husband and creative partner Peter Mark Jacobson as a spin on The Sound of Music. Only instead of Julie Andrews, she comes to the door. Jacobson knew immediately it would sell. 4 months later, the series was in pre-production. The Fran and Maxwell romance became the engine that drove all 6 seasons. But here's the twist. Drescher actually didn't want the couple to end up together. She later told interviewers that she would have preferred to keep the sexual tension unresolved and never change the dynamic of the relationship. Studio producers pushed for the marriage, which happened in the show's penultimate season. Co-creator Jacobson acknowledged the consequences, saying that when a show is built around a love that can't happen, you have to keep it that way, because as soon as the couple gets together, people start tuning out. The show ended 1 season later, a couple that almost never existed, on a show its creator almost walked away from, built around a tension its star never wanted to resolve. That's 3 near misses for 1 romance. Number 1. Ray and Debra Barone. Everybody Loves Raymond. Everybody Loves Raymond ran for 9 seasons on CBS, from 1996 to 2005, collected 15 Primetime Emmy Awards, and turned into one of the most beloved family sitcoms of all time. And the woman who played Ray's wife, Patricia Heaton, almost never got the part because network executives wanted somebody more attractive. Creator Phil Rosenthal didn't mince words when he told Yahoo Entertainment what happened. CBS wanted someone hotter to play Debra, he admitted, and he almost quit the show over it. Then CBS president Leslie Moonves pushed for a specific actress whose name Rosenthal has never revealed publicly, not even in his memoir. Rosenthal agreed to meet with her and found her pleasant and personable, but when he convinced her to read a few lines, she was, in his words, 10 times worse for the part than he'd feared. That's when the real standoff began. Rosenthal entered a meeting with Moonves carrying 3 candidates for Debra, including the network's preferred choice and 2 alternatives. He didn't have Heaton yet because he didn't even know she existed. What he did know was that Moonves would ask about the network's pick, and if Rosenthal didn't agree, he'd be out of a job. He went in that day fully prepared to quit his own show. What saved everything was honesty. When Moonves brought up the actress, Rosenthal told him the truth, saying the actress was terrific and beautiful, but her read just wasn't what he wrote, and he couldn't see her and Romano as a couple. He suggested they could do better, and to his surprise, Moonves let it slide and agreed to keep looking. 200 women auditioned for Debra before Heaton walked through the door, and when she did, Rosenthal knew within 5 minutes that she had the part. During the audition, every other actress mimed the moment where the script called for Debra to kiss her husband. Heaton actually kissed Romano. She later admitted during the show's 30th anniversary reunion special that she was that desperate to get the job. Romano's response was immediate, telling producers after she left the room that she was the one. Heaton went on to win 2 Emmys for Outstanding Lead Actress in a Comedy Series, and the Ray and Debra marriage became the comedic and emotional center of the entire show. Rosenthal put it simply, saying, "When it's right, and you know it immediately." The whole thing almost collapsed because a network president wanted the wife to look more like a runway model. If Rosenthal had been a less stubborn man, or if Moonves had pushed harder that afternoon, there's no Patricia Heaton, no 2 Emmys, no 9-season run, and no show that still pulls in over 6 million viewers for a reunion special 3 decades later. One honest conversation in a CBS office saved the whole thing. Conclusion. What stands out about all of these stories is how we talk about our favorite TV couples as though they were inevitable. Niles was always going to pine for Daphne. Jim was always destined to tell Pam how he felt. And Ray and Debra were obviously perfect together. But none of it was destined. These couples came from last-minute auditions, network power plays, actors who nearly said no, and writers who proved smart enough to listen when a studio audience or a stubborn showrunner told them they were wrong. The most carefully planned versions of these shows, the one with Frances Fisher as Jill Taylor, with Roseanne Barr as Peggy Bundy, with a hotter actress playing Debra Barone, those versions don't exist. What we got instead was messier, more accidental, and better. Fran Drescher nearly walked away from Hollywood before cornering a network president on a plane. Patricia Heaton won the role of Debra because she was the only actress brave enough to actually kiss Ray Romano in a room full of executives. David Hyde Pierce sniffed Jane Leaves's hair with no script, telling him to do it, and 7 seasons of longing came out of that single moment. Maybe the lesson isn't that sitcom romances need to follow a certain formula. Maybe the best television comes from people willing to throw out the plan when something better walks through the door. Whether that's a studio audience screaming with joy, an actress making a bold choice in a casting room, or a creator telling a network president that his show is worth losing a job over. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this one, like and subscribe and drop a comment telling me which of these couples surprised you the most. I'll see you in the next one.